All right, Daniel, how often do I rosin my bow? Great question. It really depends on how often and how long you are practicing. A good rule of thumb might be every 1 to maybe even 2 hours of practice, you want to make sure you get some rosin on. And if you're rosining more frequently, then you don't need to put as much on. So what I like to teach is that I want you to use this moment of rosining your bow as an opportunity to work on your bowing, right? So we want to learn to apply weight with the bow to the string. So how about we apply weight with the bow to the rosin? Instead of rosining the bow, let's rosin the bow. So you're holding the rosin in place and you're practicing a nice long tone with the bow and engaging that pointer finger thumb structure, so you're having to apply weight just like you were applying weight to the string. Okay. Now give it a couple of good swipes, and that might be even enough if you're putting a little bit of rosin on every day and you're only practicing for 30 minutes or so. There might be some spots on the bow where you play more often, and you might need to rosin those a little bit more heavily than the rest of the bow. And over time you will learn and start to feel, if it needs more rosin or not. You just kind of get a feel for it. And after you play, with a rosin bow, well, you're going to leave some rosin deposit on the strings. So have a nice soft cloth, like a piece of flannel, that you can wipe your strings off when you're done. And also wipe the body of your instrument off. So you're dusting that off and getting the instrument nice and clean. And that will help take care of your instrument in the long run as well. Keep in mind that depending on how much you play, you are going to want to replace the bow hair every 6 months if you're playing heavily, to every year or so, right? If you're practicing regularly enough, every year is a good rule of thumb. The reason you want to replace the bow hair is, well, for one thing, you might start to lose bow hair, and then especially if you have a wood bow and you're starting to miss like a quarter of the hair on one side, when you tighten it, it's going to tweak the bow. There will be a little bit of torsion on the stick because the hair is pulling more heavily on one side than the other. And that's not good for the life of your bow. And so that's one reason, is you might start to lose a little bit of hair on one side. And if you start to lose enough hair, you're going to want to rehair it sooner than later. Now, the hair has little barbs on it. They're like little, it's part of the texture of the horsehair. And that actually is what is grabbing the string. It's not just the rosin that is sticky. The rosin is facilitating those little barbs on the horsehair to actually grab the string. And those barbs, that texture wears out over time. So, for example, when I was heavily practicing numerous hours a day and I was touring and I was beating the crap out of my bows because I was chopping and grooving, I had to replace the hair on 2 bows every 3 months. So that kind of gives you a sense of, well, it's a dynamic process. Depends on how much you're playing, how aggressively you're playing, and you'll get a feel on that over time. When you're just getting started, say you're practicing 30 minutes a day, rehair your bow once a year just as basic maintenance. And then you're taking care of the wood stick if you have a wood bow, and you're also doing yourself a favor because you want to know what it's like to play with fresh hair and know what that feels like. You'll be able to dig in a little bit more. You'll have a better palette in terms of tonal palette, and there's just more possible with equipment that's being maintained. So the next step, also speaking of maintaining equipment, just basic things, is like, how often do you replace strings? Well, similarly, it really depends on how much you're playing. A good rule of thumb for me is replace The low strings, especially if you have high quality low strings, I know they're very expensive. I replace my low strings every 12 to 18 months as a rule of thumb. I replace my upper strings more often as needed every 6 to 12 months, maybe even every 3 months, depending on how they're sounding. And then again, like if I was performing and practicing numerous hours a day, that time frame might compress a little bit. But in terms of your basic maintenance, even like replacing your strings once a year, getting your hair rehaired, your bow hair rehaired once a year, is a good place to start. In terms of other maintenance, there is a couple things you want to keep in mind. Just keep the bridge straight. If you're not comfortable straightening it, then you want to take it to like a professional luthier, or if you're renting the instrument, just take it in. They can make sure the bridge is staying straight. If you are comfortable loosening your strings slightly, even just like down a step, you can make adjustments yourself, especially if you are more intermediate or advanced and you're comfortable with the instrument and you feel secure about this. We can go over a bridge adjustment in another video, but that's something else to keep in mind. You want the back of the bridge here to be perpendicular to the top of your instrument. That's a good rule of thumb. And the middle of the foot of the bridge should be relatively close to aligned with that little notch on the inside of your F-hole on either side. So in terms of basic bridge placement, that's really it. If your fine tuners start bottoming out and you don't have room, you got to open that up and then use the peg. And we're going to have another tuning tutorial for how to make sure you're confident using the pegs and tuning, and that you're not going to break yourself or the cello. So basic maintenance really mostly is strings and bow hair, and wiping your instrument off, taking care of it, making sure you don't leave it in the sun or outside in the cold, and check out our other video on more extended maintenance and seasonal care for more ideas.